Two Indian brothers took their counterfeit bills to a store to test. They handed the money to the busy shopkeeper. The shopkeeper took the money and instinctively rubbed it, making the young man's heart race. The next second, the shopkeeper grabbed the young man tight. Luckily, the older brother came to help, and the younger one managed to escape. The brothers were puzzled. They thought their counterfeit bills were so realistic. These two brothers had exceptional talent since childhood. The older brother was a skilled artist and the younger one was great at printing. The older brother grew up to be a street artist, specializing in replicating famous paintings from around the world, making them indistinguishable from the original. However, in India, an unknown artist is almost a beggar, and his business was bleak. He set his sights on counterfeiting, because the new rupee notes used microprinting technology, which the world's best printers couldn't replicate without showing the unique moire pattern. The only way to create the counterfeit base was through drawing, and the older brother was a painting genius. He spent a week observing the 50 rupee note, using his years of experience replicating famous paintings to see every detail clearly. After 2 months of repeated correction, he finally perfectly recreated every detail of the 50 rupee note and pieced them together to form a hand-drawn base. Next, it was the younger brother's turn and applied a chemical protective layer. After cooling the counterfeit base, the crucial step was printing. They bought an old second-hand printing machine. They extracted the security thread from a real 10 rupee note and inserted it into the counterfeit 50 rupee note. Finally, they used a stamping machine to add a serial number. Looking at the flawless counterfeit note, they were excited, but they noticed a problem. They soaked the counterfeit note in tea and hung it to dry overnight. Note was too new, so they intentionally aged it. They took the counterfeit note to a large convenience store to test it, but the shopkeeper noticed something was wrong. The older brother was frustrated. He asked the younger brother to close his eyes and handed him a few notes. With only one being counterfeit, the younger brother felt them and identified the counterfeit note. It turned out the paper they used was different from real notes. Having found the problem, they began to solve it in the following days. They touched 2 sheets of paper together, and the texture was unbeatable, almost identical to real notes. They immediately separated the front and back of the counterfeit note, inserted the security thread on the portrait side, and glued them together. As usual, they aged it with tea and dried it overnight. The new counterfeit note was ready. The two went to the convenience store again, with the older brother using the counterfeit note to buy soda. This time, the shopkeeper handed over the beer and gave change, meaning their counterfeit note was successful. The brothers started looking for buyers. Through a thug friend, they met a gang leader and mixed the counterfeit notes with real ones to show him. The leader looked at them for a long time and couldn't tell which was fake. The leader was impressed by the brothers' skills and immediately placed an order for 200,000 counterfeit notes. The brothers didn't expect their first order to be so large. They were thrilled. But there was a problem. They didn't have enough printing machines and materials. The older brother had to go to their uncle, who worked in a printing factory. When the uncle heard they wanted to print counterfeit notes, he refused immediately. To ease his uncle's concerns, the older brother took him to a high-end restaurant. Seeing the owner repeatedly check without finding any flaws, the uncle was tempted and invested all his savings into the printing factory, rejecting all other orders to start printing counterfeit notes. When they prepared all the materials, they found they didn't have enough paper. The brothers decided to take a risk and rob the paper mill. They hired a group of thugs to storm the paper mill and control all the staff. They went to the warehouse and found the banknote paper. To avoid suspicion, they not only stole the banknote paper, but also some other types of paper. Now they had everything they needed. The printing factory went full throttle. After 5 days of continuous printing, 2 million counterfeit notes were completed. The gang leader carefully inspected the goods and found the counterfeit notes were even more realistic than real ones. Satisfied, he paid 1 million real notes to complete the transaction. However, there was already a counterfeit note tycoon in the circle, whose counterfeit note industry was huge and had never had any problems for many years. But recently, the government launched a new type of counterfeit note detector, claiming to identify all counterfeit notes. The tycoon put his newly printed counterfeit notes into the machine, and it immediately sounded an alarm, making him furious. His subordinate handed him a counterfeit note made by the brothers, saying it was a newcomer with high-quality work. But when he put the counterfeit note into the detector and it passed the test, he was shocked. The tycoon ordered that this artist must be brought to work for him. Soon, the brothers were captured under coercion and temptation. They had no choice but to help the tycoon print counterfeit note. They arrived at their new workplace and found it was professional. There were banknote machines identical to those used for real notes and an endless supply of papers. The 20,000 rupee note had more details, with over a dozen different texts alone. After half a year, he created a counterfeit 20,000 rupee note that couldn't be detected by the counterfeit note detector. The tycoon immediately arranged for mass printing, but just as they were about to transport the counterfeit note, the driver responsible for transportation was caught. The tycoon switched from land to water transport. Everything went smoothly until the tycoon called and told them not to dock because the port was swarming with police. The older brother looked at the map and came up with a clever idea. He had the captain sail to the near shore, hang the locator on the container with the fuel, and sink the container into a 20-meter shallow area. After doing all this, everyone abandoned the ship and escaped on lifeboats. Once the coast was clear, the brothers retrieved the containers using the locator and successfully delivered them to the destination arranged by the tycoon. 12 billion counterfeit notes were about to flood the Indian market. This is an Indian TV drama called Farzi. The original content is rich, well shot, and the plot is good, getting more exciting as it goes on. Have you watched this already? Or what do you think about this story? Let me know in the comment below.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share our content. See you in the next one.